This chapter was chock full of just great jaw-dropping information that is necessary and advances the plot and the characters, and I just love it! One Piece, Chapter 434, Whitebeard and Red Hair. What? Really? Holy shit, man. Okay, you're gonna have to bear with me. I'm gonna try to wrap my mind around all this stuff because, boy, man, they just dropping the bombs. Well, hello, my brothers and sisters of the Nerd Nation. I, as always, am Jim, here to bring you another review on the awesome and tantalizing, straw-hat, red-haired, Shanks-filled tale of One Piece. Now, our last chapter, of course, really primarily focused on back at Water 7 and just kind of like the after arc party, if you will, and everybody just kind of living it up and whatnot. There was a brief encounter between Aokiji and Robin, and for the most part, really the chapter itself was fairly self-contained. At the end of it, however, though, they wound up kind of giving us this hint that, on Marijoa, they had talked and gotten a report of red-haired Shanks breaking through the fleet and actually is going to be meeting with Whitebeard, and apparently it's going to be like a clash of the titans with these two. So that's how the chapter left off. The chapter actually picks up right there and focuses. You don't see Luffy or those Straw Hats, and you don't need them, honestly, in this chapter, because boy, did they just cram pack this just chock full of information, just awesome little tidbits. So I'm going to try to wrap my mind around everything here, and I might actually use my actual volume for a little reference here as well. First and foremost, we wind up getting to see the two ships, Whitebeard's ship and Shanks' ship, and just kind of docked up against each other, and they're like, and the redhead is approaching or is boarding the ship, you know. And then we're introduced, and again, just very briefly, just by kind of like the name bars that show up underneath them, to the 1st and 3rd Division commanders of the Whitebeard Pirates. And that would be Marco, who we did see briefly back a couple hundred chapters ago, and then this giant beast of a person, Jozu, or Jazu. And that's the 1st and 3rd Division commanders. Obviously, we get to see the two Jolly Rogers flying overhead there and what have you. Now, what winds up happening is they start warning some of the other just kind of regular crew members and whatnot. They said, listen, you better just kind of get out of here. They're warning some of the lower level guys. And this is the first talk of or introduction to what they call as Red-haired Shanks approaches and gets on the ship, people start like passing out. And they explain it that like basically their willpower is not strong enough to combat this overwhelming like force power that he has. That's how the only way I can describe it and understand it now, and it's called Haki. And this power, apparently his Haki is so strong that literally if you're just not like up to the task like mentally, you just would just like pass out from, you know, it's actually really cool the way they show it, because it almost reminds me of, in the best way that I can describe it from what I understand, anybody that's, you know, been around the last 30, 40 years in that time period, American pop culture, would be the Force from Star Wars, you know, just kind of this ever-breathing presence that you can sort of summon and command, and some have better control of and mastery of than others. Anyway, I'm not going to get too much into it right now. It's probably a video for another time, because I don't know a whole lot about it yet. They don't really talk a lot about it yet. But anyway, Shanks and Whitebeard wind up going face to face, and everybody's on edge, right? And Shanks even says, he goes, listen, you know, I apologize about my basically about my Haki, you know, being so, but I get nervous when I'm on enemy ships, right? So apparently, even though these are two of the 4 emperors of the New World, they're obviously still enemies, you know, and when they meet, it's definitely under some very tense circumstances. So Whitebeard, of course, we know obviously has some kind of ailment, disease, whatever, because he's still hooked up to all his machines, his breathing machines, and everything, but it's still just this huge, imposing 20-foot tall figure, or whatever he may be. He's just enormous, right? Shanks winds up bringing some wine as kind of a, just as a nice gesture to him and what have you. And then we start getting a bunch of different things laid on us. We find out that Shanks came up on, and him and Buggy together were on none other than the Pirate King, former Pirate King, Goldie Rogers' ship, right? So, I don't know how far Shanks sailed with him. I don't know if Shanks knows about or has seen or has been near the One Piece. I don't know when he broke off and went on his own. I'm not really sure. I know that he was with him up until when the Pirate King was executed, so you would assume that he had seen and been there for all that, but I don't know how much prior that he was there for, because then he talks about how him and Buggy basically parted ways at Logtown after, of course, he was executed. So I was looking at that and going, holy shit, because this is Buggy way back from the second story arc that we wound up going through, right? And of course we've seen him a few other times here or there, and so never did I dream that he came from that, right? And to tell you the truth, with Shanks too, I didn't really know what to think, Anyway, the next thing that winds up getting dropped on us is he talks about how when he's sitting there, they're talking about like the old days and how things used to be, right? And they talk about how like Garp, obviously Luffy's grandfather, Sengoku, the Admiral, and Roger himself, those are some of the dying breed, the last of, that actually kind of know how the sea was, how the ocean was, And then Shanks says, what do you expect? It's been 22 years or whatever. Obviously, Whitebeard's kind of living in like these olden times. Then he goes and he starts talking to Shanks about his missing arm and his scars and everything else, and says, "Oh, I remember it like the fight between you and Mihawk." So we know that Shanks and Mihawk obviously had some kind of huge duel battle or whatever that they obviously both came out alive on. So I kind of want to find out more about that too. And then he winds up talking. He says, but we were all surprised to go and see you come back, with obviously missing an arm, right, from the East Blue, and. So who did you give your arm to and everything? And then they kind of show a little flashback with Luffy and all that. And he says, I gave it up for the new era of pirates, So, I sacrificed it, whatever. And Whitebeard says, well, as long as you don't have regrets. And then he keeps talking about the scars that still ache that he got from, obviously, Goldie Roger. Shanks then goes into this thing where he says, out of all the scars I have and everything else, the only one that aches is this one, and it's the 3 scratch-looking scar that goes across his eye, right? And he says, and this one wasn't gained from battle against this, battle against it. It was done by none other than Blackbeard Teach, and he calls him Blackbeard Teach. We know his name is Edward Teach, so he just calls him Blackbeard Teach. And I'm thinking, okay, all right, so Blackbeard's the one that you obviously tussled with you at some point and gave you these scars. The thing that he says that he's talking to Whitebeard about that makes Teach so dangerous is that he didn't go and try to rise up through the ranks or everything. He laid low and just hid behind the great shadow of the great almighty Whitebeard until he could go and take his, until he could obviously enact whatever his plan was, right? And we don't know, at least I don't, what happened between when he kind of broke off and obviously killed somebody within Whitebeard's crew and whatnot. That's why he's got Ace chasing after him. And where he is now, we don't know what he possesses as far as power-wise, if there's a devil fruit, where he got it, when he got it, any of that stuff, right? But we wind up getting more information in this chapter about that than we have got in the entire series thus far, so bear with me again. Very, very cool stuff. So as he goes and he winds up talking about him, and that's what is Shanks has actually come there. He kind of came there, gave the wine as a peace offering just to kind of like have a talk with him. And his whole thing is that a guy like that that's underhanded and he will never stop until he's at the top. He'll eventually come after you and this and that. And Whitebeard's like, you think I don't know that and this and that? What's your point, right? And he says, you need to go and call Ace off of him, right? Just leave him be for right now. If you don't, the new age of piracy is going to spiral and be this chaotic, out of control type of thing. Nobody's going to be able to control it. And he says, because Ace is young, he's strong, he could be your 2nd Division commander, and he's basically saying, like, don't let him go and throw himself away or whatever on this fool's errand, this unnecessary thing. So for whatever reason or another, he doesn't want those two clashing at this particular time. I don't really know. Again, I have no idea what's going on with things. But obviously we know that Shanks is now a force to be reckoned with and not somebody to be trifled or fucked with. And even Whitebeard makes mention of how he's risen up so much through the ranks over the last couple of decades. But blink of an eye to Whitebeard, but Shanks has gone from being basically just like a deckhand, or how he explained it, a lowly apprentice on Roger's crew, to now actually being one of the 4 strongest, powers in the new world and what have you. So very, very cool stuff. Whitebeard, of course, though, just is basically like, listen, buddy, I'm not going to have no snot-nosed brat tell me what's going on. I'm not calling off. He says, the one ironclad rule that you have, at least on his ship, and I'm assuming for any pirate ship, is that you do not kill a crewmate, right? And he's talking about how he goes, no matter how stupid a pirate is and this and that, when I bring him on, I still treat them like a son. And the souls of my dead sons are crying out for vengeance and revenge for what Teach did to one of his people. So he says, can you get that through your thick skull? So then, and I love this, man, So then Shanks goes and gets up, and with his one arm, he goes and he pulls out his fucking sword, man, and he's about to go toe-to-toe and talks to him about, you know, nobody will be able to control this, the chaos and spiral out of control, you know? And then Whitebeard gets up, and this was, oh man, this was my next favorite part over here. I was just looking at this shit, and I was like, you gotta be kidding me, right? They show this little picture of them about to clash over here in the corner. I'm like, oh, okay, right? Next page, double page spread. These two titans, man, wind up splitting the heavens, man. The clouds just straight up went and said, and just get the fuck out of here. Because these two wound up clashing, right? And even the crew members from both ships are like, whoa, hold on a second. I thought he said he wasn't going to fight and this and that, but clearly they're not talking anymore, you know, blah, 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 right? And then they're like, they split the clouds. No, they split the heavens. Now, if that wasn't enough, the last 2 pages go in an island somewhere on the Grand Line. We wind up going to Blackbeard's crew, right? And Blackbeard's reading about what happened in the Judicial Island and what happened with Luffy and everything else. If you remember, last time we saw him was when Luffy and company were on their way up to Skypiea a couple hundred chapters ago. So we know he's still obviously looking for him, and apparently they're very close to Enies Lobby. They're going to go in, or Water 7, and they're going to set sail and go that way to, you know, to head him off, to take care of him, whatever, right? So we get this check-in with Blackbeard and with his crew, and obviously that's cool, because we were just talking about him for most of the chapter. Then the last panel of the chapter, we got, it looks like Ace finally caught up with him over here, because we got to, hold on, Teach, I've been looking for you. So now I'm thinking, oh, the shit's gonna hit the fan. The nice thing about this story is that so many things have been kind of put out there, and plot threads and carrots have been dangled, so to speak, that over the course of these last 400 chapters or so, for me, a lot of this big-time pertinent information has come a little bit few and far between. You have to wait, you know, for these last couple of arcs have been extremely long. I mean, if you look at the main arcs of Skypiea and then, of course, the Water 7 Enies Lobby thing, and you don't get a lot of this character development and exposition and story being furthered too much unless it's in between. So for me, these last 4 or 5 chapters have just been nothing short of godly. I mean, because everything that I read up to it was great, but it's kind of like better, best. You know what I mean? And that's where I feel like I'm getting into best. Some of the good, the meat and potatoes of it. I'm finding out more about this world. I had no idea until this chapter what the hell Haki was. I have seen it in comments and things like that and wondered what the hell people were talking about, and I had no clue. You know, a couple of times that I've seen it mentioned about people using their Haki, and I'm just assuming, okay, that's obviously some kind of power, or maybe it was the Japanese translation of like a devil fruit power or some shit like that. I never really paid much mind to it. So now these things coming full circle, you know, and having like heard the name The New World, and now knowing where the New World is and what that refers to, you know, and hearing about the 4 emperors, you know, the Yonko, and what they, or I think it's Yonko, and all that type of stuff, man. It just gets me going. Oh my god, it's so good. Shaking with excitement here. Anyway, my chapter question for you, though, brothers and sisters, is what was your favorite moment from this chapter? You know, and obviously you can pick out any of them. You know, the reveal that, you know, obviously Shanks was part of Gold D. Rogers' crew, and him and Buggy came up with him. The clash between Whitebeard and Shanks and his Haki, the revealing of that obviously him, and I'm assuming others maybe like him, have this just indomitable will that just can knock out other people that don't have it. And the introduction of the 1st and 3rd Division commanders, formerly obviously for you know, for Whitebeard's crew, the end of it. I mean, really, you know, with Ace appearing on Blackbeard, just awesome stuff, man. I hope I didn't miss anything. I try to kind of recap and review and just sort of regurgitate the information that I've taken in digestible chunks that people can understand, and just kind of trying to share my experience. But chapters like these, it's tough because there's so many things going on, and this is just just bring a smile to my face. So anyway, feel free to answer that question, what your favorite moment was from this chapter, in the comments down below. Feel free to hit the thumbs up, the like button if you should think that I deserve it, and subscribe if you haven't done so already. We will look forward to catching all of you in the next Fun Nation. As always, thanks for watching, and remember to take a look at my other channels.